Good morning, adventurers! Yay for summer! This week has felt so amazing. The breeze has been so nice. Today, I'm going to show you a picture and give you a little time to find the hidden images. So take a look and let someone in your family know when you find one. If you need to pause the video, please feel free to do so. Are you ready? Great, let's go! Wow, did you find them all? Great job! Don't forget, if you're an elementary student, join in with myself and Miss Amanda on Monday night at 6 for our new summer focus. We hope you have an amazing day. Bye, adventurers!
Ho, ho! You know what time it is?
It's time to hear a story full of wonder. There's so much fun we'll have learning together. So let's go down to the clubhouse with Ollie and his friends. Let's go down to the clubhouse where wonder never ends at the Wonder Clubhouse. Me and you at the Wonder Clubhouse. Me and you.
Oh, hi friends, and welcome to the clubhouse. It's me, Lucy, and I had the best art project to work on today. But it's super windy outside, and something crazy just happened. The wind blew my circles all over the clubhouse, and now I need you to help me spy them all. Point when you see one. I spy with my little eye a circle that is blue and held by my cuddly friend. Do you see it? Yep, you're good. What should I make with this one? It's blue, like water. Oh, I know. It's the whole world. That was fun. Let's do another one. I spy with my little eye a circle that is brown, and wow, the wind blew it up high. Do you see it? Yes, you got it. Well, actually, this is kind of golden brown, like my favorite food, nice and warm, right out of the oven. It's a pizza. On the count of 3, shout out your favorite pizza toppings. 1, 2, 3. Those are so yummy. My favorites are pepperoni and peppers.
Ho, ho!
It's Ollie.
Hello, Lucy. Ho, ho! Making tasty round treats, are you?
There's so much fun stuff to make with circles.
Crafting with circles is fun, it's true. I know a very special circle, just for you. So let's hear the story. Just follow me through. Hoo, hoo.
Follow me through, follow me through. Ollie got a Bible story for me and you.
Hello, friends! I'm Aisha, and welcome to my cupcake food truck. Do you want to see today's special? Ta-da! They're my whole lot of love cupcakes. I made them because today's story is about someone special who loves us so, so much. If you're ready for a story, on the count of 3, yell, "Tell me a story." 1, 2, 3. Tell me a story. Today's amazing true story is about someone very special who did something only he can do. If you think you know who this very special person is, I want you to shout out his name. Yes, Jesus! Jesus is the very special person, and I am going to tell you about the most amazing thing he ever did that only he can do. God sent his son, Jesus, to show us how to love each other and to be our friend forever. Wait, where did the heart go? We might need to play I Spy to find it. Get out your pretend binoculars and let's look for it. Ready? Tell me when you see the heart. I spy with my little eye a heart. And look, it's showing us that Jesus taught us how to love others by being a good friend. Wait, where did it go? Let's look for it. Ready? I spy with my little eye the heart! Right there! Good job, everyone! And look, the heart is showing us that Jesus was a good friend to people who were different than him. Not again! Where did it go now? Let's look for it. Ready? I spy with my little eye the heart! It's showing us that Jesus was a good friend to everyone, even people who made bad choices. Jesus was a friend to everyone. One day, a very sad thing happened. Some angry people took Jesus away and hurt him so bad that he died. Jesus' friends buried him in a tomb and rolled a big stone in front of it. Jesus was gone, and his friends were very, very sad. But on the 3rd day, Jesus did something that only Jesus can do. Jesus came back! Jesus is alive! Yes, Jesus is alive! Say that with me. Jesus is alive. One more time. Jesus is alive! We know Jesus is alive because people saw him and talked with him. Then they wrote all about it so we can know and believe that Jesus is alive. Did you like the story? If you did, give it 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. Oh, hey, Ollie. Tell me, who can believe in Jesus?
I can believe in Jesus. Yes, it's true. Now let's hear it from you. Tell me, who can believe in Jesus?
I can believe in Jesus. That's the truth, friends. You better believe it. See you next time. Bye.
So there's your story, and it's all true. Jesus is alive, and he's a friend forever to you and me, too.
Thanks, Ollie.
Goodbye to you. Hoo, hoo.
Wow, what a great story. Jesus wants to be a friend to everyone. That means Jesus wants to be my friend, and he wants to be your friend, too. I think I got the story. Did you get it? If you did, say got it. Get it?
Got it!
Good. I spy with my little eye a circle that is gray and right behind me. I'm going to paint this so it looks just like the stone that was in front of Jesus' tomb. The stone got rolled away because Jesus is alive.
These are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. John 20:31. These are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. John 20:31.
every breath we could ever breathe, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe, we live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. We're creation suddenly articulate, with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry. Then from north to south and east to west, we'd hear Christ be magnified. Were the whole earth echoing his eminence. His name would burst from sea and sky. And oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. God, we worship you. We lift up your name and sing your praise. And God, more than ever, we need you. We need the light of your sun in a dark world. You're so good and you're so faithful and you're so steadfast. And we need to lean on you, lean into you, God, in a time where our world is crumbling under our feet. You are the rock, and we rest on you. Remind us of your goodness. Remind us of your faithfulness and show us the places where you're working, God. Encourage us in that, knowing that you're still on your throne, you're still sovereign, you're still in control. We love you. In your name we pray these things. Amen.
moment and say thank you for joining us this morning. We apologize for technical difficulties. We understand we're a little bit behind, but so because of that, we've made some adjustments to the schedule, and hopefully you will adjust with us this morning, because we have a very special guest, my friend KaRon Coleman, and we're here as we begin a series entitled Colorblind, and thinking about race relationships and what it means for all of us as humans, humankind, what it means to be made unique in the image of God. And so over the next few weeks, we'll be talking about that and thinking about that. And I was talking to KaRon recently and just asking him, what should I be doing and thinking and praying about? And how can I get involved as a white pastor, but even just as a human being? Like, what can I do to join in on the conversation and continue to be a part of a solution for equality and all? And here's one of the things I want to make clear to you is, for me, this is not a political issue. This is a theological, scriptural issue, is that we're all created in the image of God. It's Imago Dei, and my brother here is we are unique creations of God. And so we're just that's our theological bent, that's where we're at. And today we're going to be putting on lenses to hopefully understand one another better and have a better idea of how we can serve one another and care for one another and do the things that we need to do, in particular, as followers of Jesus Christ. I was telling you yesterday when we were kind of talking and having some great food that my wife cooked and kind of getting together, and one of the stories that I vividly remember, and now I would go visit my grandparents often through the summer, and one of the things we would do is we would go fishing. We would go on a barge on Lake Tawakoni and go crappie fishing overnight. So we would get there just as the sun's going down and put our stuff, all that different thing. And I'll be honest with you, like, we were the only 3 white people on the barge, okay? Yeah. And again, a different time. And so my grandparents would say, hey, we're going to go hang out with the colored folk, okay? And I know that's not necessarily the appropriate thing to say today, right? Yeah. And so one day, I went back to school. I was about 10 or 11 years old, and I had friends of all different ethnicities. Yeah. And I looked at my friend. I won't tell you his name because he might be watching. And I went to him and I said, hey, man, I didn't know you were colored folk. Yeah. And he was like, do I look like a crayon? Yeah. And I said, whoa. And in that moment, it struck me, because I'm sitting there with my friends that are black, my friends that are Hispanic, and I'm like, whoa, something, and I didn't fully understand it, but something in my soul woke. That's right. And so from that point, one of the things that I told you was, man, I've never, whenever we played football and ran track and stuff, it was like, if you're fast, you're fast. If you catch, you catch. It wasn't about, and if you wanted to be a part of this team, that's what brought us together. And so in a locker room, race wasn't an issue. Yeah. And so I've grown up with that. And then God's thankfully molded and shaped my heart through athletics. Yeah. And so that's why we've entitled the series Colorblind, is that we have to be honest with ourselves and say, hey, when I see you, I see a black man. Absolutely. When you see me, you see a white man. When we see someone that's Hispanic, they're Hispanic. That's and right. That's not a bad thing. I mean, that's a part of recognition of how God's uniquely created someone. That's right. But it also allows us then to be able to go, okay, I need to step in and ask questions, or to maybe to understand them in a way, because every one of us brings beauty together. And that's that meshing of a tapestry. On the front side you see the beautiful part, but on the back side you don't see the mess. That's right. That's really there. And so to get to know someone, to help understand the beauty of who they are, is that all of our stuff intermingles, and your story and how you've gotten to where you're at, even our friendship. So this morning, as we've talked about, I want you to just share your heart. Yeah. And if there's some things that kind of rise up, we want to ask some questions, we're able to do that. So I welcome my friend KaRon Coleman, and KaRon, just share with us a little about yourself and what God's laid on your heart.
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, man, I really appreciate you inviting me, and it's just an opportunity for us to get together and share our lives with each other, and also be able to influence. And I think, that's the call for not just us, but for all of us. And so, I'm very thankful and appreciative to have the opportunity just to give a different perspective, And I think that's probably the most important thing right now is understanding the perspective, So I was kind of, very briefly trying to explain my story, but growing up, I grew up predominantly in African American schools, like those, from elementary to middle school. There was not really a lot of other people, Like I said, I remember a guy named Billy, and Billy was a white kid, and we had no problem with Billy, but that was it. That was it, But my mom did something in my summer of that 8th grade year. We went to a different part of Missouri City, Texas, and in that area there was going to be a new school there, Elkins High School. And so in that time, I really didn't know what to expect. And when I went to school, it was like, wow, this is like everybody's here, So it was everybody. And this was a part when Missouri City was kind of like the Sugar Land, because those neighborhoods still were high end all the way to, $150,000 homes. So, it was a wide spectrum of different people. And so that was really my first experience, but honestly, that was the thing that really prepared me for, what would happen next in my life and the things that were going on. Because although my education became diverse, when I got involved with a church, it was First Baptist Church in Missouri City. How I got connected with them was through athletics. I first got connected through the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. That's how I got saved, going through an athletic camp. And for us, all we wanted to do was play sports. And so me and my friends would literally go and try to find basketball goals, and you know how it is in the summertime. And there was this guy named Rod Ward. He drove around. I was like, hey man, you guys want to go to a gym? Like, yeah, we want to go to a gym. And man, we got in the back of his truck, and I was really one of the only guys that really stayed and got connected. And it was a First Baptist church, but it was very, very diverse. And Rod was African-American male, and he was being intentional about his family and the churches that they joined. And so he had a really great influence in my life of teaching me about multicultural ministry before I even knew what it was. Sure. And so that was something that had been taught to me really since about the age of 13 from an experience standpoint until I, began to make my own decisions later.
Yeah. So obviously as a professional athlete and as a pastor, share a little bit of your experience and just how you have incorporated. I know one of the things we talked about was you've given up some things to be a part of some white congregations and that.
And I think that's what I talked to you about, is that me and my wife, we have 6 kids. We have 1 boy and we have 5 girls, and me and my wife, we had like really good discussions about finding a church as our kids were growing up. I was still, going to seminary, going to Bible college, so I wasn't pastoring a church, but I was preparing to be a minister. And so we were trying to find churches that would, ultimately help us with all of the things that we wanted, that they could minister to us, our marriage, and then of course help us to raise our kids. And so, there's an interesting dynamic, understand that I am generalizing what I'm going to say. Sure. So please don't take it literally. But there's also, like, we talk about black and white, but there's also a gray. Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes being black has been identified as being the farthest away from something white. So if I am talking proper, if I have a political ideal, if I do things a certain way, as far as that is away from you, that is something that identifies my blackness. And that's not necessarily true, because you may have someone that really may not fit 100% in a pure black, if that's what you describe it, and then you go into the white world and you're not accepted either. And so there's a gray area here for families, again, I'm generalizing, of things that they desire. And so we went to black churches, we went to white churches. We didn't feel like one was better than the other, but what we felt was good for our family was to join a large Southern Baptist, predominantly white congregation. And we talked about what we were doing, and we knew that in order for us to do this, that we would have to give up some things culturally. I'll give one example, and this was actually kind of hurtful because there was, you know, I mean, we have a controversy about this right now, because honestly, there are some things that people are just not aware of, like Juneteenth, okay, an example. Also, Martin Luther King Jr., it's a national holiday, all right? So we were at church, and I think the holiday was on a Monday, and I could just remember us talking, you know, like in a small group. We would do like a fellowship group before, and it was like, what's going on Monday? What's this, the holiday? And we were just like, yes, it is. It's a national holiday. Some people still had to go to work. Some people didn't. Yeah. And I was like, we having a barbecue tomorrow. Like, I mean, you know, we're having people over our house. Like, this is something that, like, don't y'all know? There was no recognition in church. There was not an acknowledgement. There was nothing in the program. There was nothing. And, you know, it was just like, wow, like, you know, I mean, did you even know that this date is on the calendar? It is a national holiday. And some businesses don't even honor it as a holiday. Banks are open, and it's just, you know, I think things have changed now, but back then it was just a regular day. And it was like, how is this a holiday? You know, even going to Juneteenth and what that means to the black community, and to not even acknowledge it or even recognize it, you know, it's disappointing. You know, it's like, why don't I matter as well? You know, I'm not asking you to be black. I'm not asking you to understand everything about me, but there are some basic things I think that all people are responsible for. And I think when you see the issues that we're dealing with right now, the anger of black people is that you just don't understand. You know, it's like you've lived in your own world for this long, for so long, and you've ignored me for so long, and now you are just like almost completely unaware of what I've had to go through. You know, so give you another example, me and my wife, something that, you know, me and Chris, we talked about, and something that people don't understand, that me and my wife and my black friends, we have conversations with each other that we don't have with white people. And one of those things is that we all talk about how do we have to prepare our children, especially if we have a son, a black son. My son is 19 years old, he's in Arkansas, he goes to school, and he has to drive home. And our fear is, hey son, what would you do if you got pulled over? Like, this is a real conversation. Like, and my son is an athlete, he's a smart kid, never been in trouble, never got anything wrong, but with all this stuff going on, there could be a moment for him if he got pulled over where he just is afraid. He's afraid and he is scared because of all the things that he's seen on TV and all heard. And what if he just takes off running? You know, I mean, you know, KJ don't do it, you know, but we're afraid if just panic sets in, like, is he gonna die? Because he was afraid. And so we literally teach our kids now to just come home. Like, that's our message. Like, we just want you to come home. Like, we understand that you have rights. We understand the legal system is supposed to provide rights to all citizens, but you know what? The reality is that you are seen differently. And it's not fair, it's not right, but you know what? We have to start focusing on common sense to get you home because of the situation that we find ourselves in the world we live today.
We were talking about that the other day. doesn't have words. And I was telling you that, I sent my daughter to Memphis. Heavily diverse community. That was one of the things that in discussions for college and different things like that. She's incredibly intelligent, smart, lovely lady that loves Jesus.
Yeah.
And so that was our discussion is, hey, listen, there's going to be guys there that are going to want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And you show them pictures of dad's muscles. And but that was one of the questions. I said, listen, I don't care what ethnicity.
Sure.
My deal is the number one question you ask is, do you love Jesus?
Yeah.
And that's been consistent, for both of my kids. I mean, I'm like, hey man, that's a great girl, that's a great guy, they love Jesus, those kind of things. And so that's one of the things that we've been discussing as a family is, because those things do matter,
They do.
right? And so, but just to have that discussion, and so it's a whole different discussion. And when you and I were talking about, with your son, and I just can't even imagine the fear for you as a parent.
That's right.
And so even one of the parents, we have a discussion board for the school for parents of my daughter's class, and that was one of the statements that a mother, an African American mother, made. They live in Chicago, and she said, the bravest thing that I've ever done is to send my oldest son, who's an African American boy, to the heart of Memphis.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I was like, I'm trying to grasp what she's saying, and as I've stepped back from it and listened to you and others.
Yeah, and it's something that there's a fear that we have because it can be any day. I mean, and let's just say he's having a bad day.
Sure.
Let's say he did something wrong.
Yeah.
He deserved to be pulled over.
Sure.
And I think that the unfairness of the type of force that is being used now, against African Americans is why African Americans are so angry. Yeah. It's just like, yes, I understand he was drunk. Like, he resisted arrest. He was running though. Like, did you have to shoot him?
Right.
And we've seen other issues where we've seen really white men like swinging knives and chainsaws and they can a mass murderer gets taken to Burger King and it's like treating him like and a guy that's a misdemeanor he won't come home. He won't ever see his child. And the easiest thing to do, I think, is to deflect away from the realities of what has happened in the past, what continues to happen, to focus on the individual and say, well, he was wrong. Well, you know what? Two wrongs don't make a right. But the reality is there is something to this. Yeah. And I think that is what we're asking for other people to be aware of. See, there's a bias that we all have. Sure. I mean, I think for us to say, hey, I don't have a bias would not be genuine. It just wouldn't be honest because, from the day that we have been born, we have been programmed to think certain things about certain things. I'll give an example. Why do we call tigers tigers? We call a tiger a tiger because we've been told that that's a tiger. Right? And if I said there's a tiger in here right now, we would all leave the premises because we think of a tiger as being something that would eat you up, right? It would hurt you, it would harm you. So guess what? I like a tiger. I like to see it from afar, but I don't want a tiger to be my next door neighbor. I don't want that tiger to be right here with me, right? And so think about it. If the images of African Americans, especially African Americans men, has been these guys are lazy, they don't want to work, they're going to rape your wife, they're going to mismanage money, just the stereotype over and over and how literally black men were devalued. Sure. It was a systematic thought because as Christians, guess what? We couldn't say that a black man is different from a white man. So there had to be a reason Like there had to be reason, and there had to be the breakdown of something to allow a pastor to say, hey, black folks, y'all go up there, white folks, y'all stay down here. You know, it had to be a reason. There had to be a way for us to believe. And oftentimes, as we know, the Bible was used to support slavery. The Bible was used to support segregation. Because again, the mentality was, I can be right theologically, but not necessarily right from an orthodoxy standpoint. Yeah. From how we practice this. Yeah. Like it's subjected to my own bias. And it's okay. Sure. And we still have these models even today. I mean, it's the reason why we still have white churches, black churches. I mean, my whole thing is this. If a community is right outside your door, and we know that this does not always happen for a number of different reasons. We've both been highly trained in church planning and understand just about everything you can think of when it comes to community and building and those things. But to me, in my opinion, the litmus test is what is outside of your door, okay? I mean, is there black people there? Is there white people there? Is there Hispanic people? In my opinion, I think you start there first. Of course, people will travel, people will come, and that's great and that's fine. But why are we not connecting with them? What is it about our church that person across the street will not come in here?
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of the Great Samaritan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a guy that's injured, and the most religious of them literally look at the situation and know that they're a possible solution and walk as far as they possibly can. And so it's that idea of who's our neighbor.
That's right.
And unfortunately, sometimes our orthopraxy, how we've fleshed out our orthodoxy, even though we may say everyone is my neighbor, sure, there's a fear, there's a whatever it may be, and so we walk past and try to stay as far away from the issue as possible, because it's almost this, well, if I don't really deal with it, then I'm okay.
That's right.
Instead of really going, okay, I need to get into this mess.
That's right.
And and in all honesty, I mean, the Southern Baptist Convention, where Southern Baptist Church
That's right.
was started because we wanted to continue to
That's
hold
right.
slaves.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And so how we started was a bad, hideous thing.
And it's much of our history.
Oh,
the issue
yeah.
of slavery it is the dividing, that's the dividing point.
Yeah, August of 1619, right?
That's right.
So we've built this wonderful republic.
That's right.
On the backs of many, but it's specifically African Americans. And so, and all the different things. I mean, there's a lot of history and all those different things. And so, and what does it look like for us now to be the Great Samaritan?
That's right.
And to get into the mess and to deal with the real life issues? Because if Scripture is real
That's right.
and relevant, then it's definitely real and relevant to this.
Absolutely. And really that's what I want to do. I wanted to just focus on a passage in Galatians chapter 2, verses 11 through 15. But before we do that, I would always do a benediction, and we had different benedictions. And one time, a real good friend of mine said, man, why don't you focus on something that's like essential? And so we went to John 13 and 34, and every Sunday we would close our service with this. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. We usually stop there. But if you keep going, it says this. You also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, of you have love for one another. Now, it's interesting because it's very simple. Yeah. As a matter of fact, your shirt says love does, right? Yeah. Right? And so the ideal of loving people is not new. Right? It's not foreign. It's something that we accept, However, when you go to Galatians, guess what? Paul and Peter had a similar struggle. So think about love as theology, okay? Think about it as a doctrine. And Paul was saying, you know what? I want to make sure that I'm not running in vain. He wanted to make sure that, that I have this correct, because everywhere Paul went, there were people who followed him, the Judaizers, that would say, hey, Paul, hey, man, great sermon, but you go over there and let me talk to the rest of the congregation and tell them, hey, make sure you get circumcised, make sure you don't eat any pork, make sure, right? So they would go behind Paul and say, hey, he missed out a few things. And Paul was saying, you know what? I want to make sure that I'm theologically correct. Like that I'm clear that we are justified by faith alone. But guess what? It doesn't stop there. It actually, he went to the extent to say, you know what? I also want to make sure that I'm also acting right as well. So the theology would not conflict with his practice, with the way he lived his life. And so guess what? This confrontation that Paul has with Peter is a big deal. And I'm bringing this in the context because this is where we are today. How I can be helpful today to use this text right here to really kind of guide and inform us. And so I just really want to just spend a few minutes, and hopefully you are familiar with this, but I'll just read a few verses and then I'll just give you a few things. If you look at Galatians chapter 2 and verse 11, it says, but when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face, because he stood condemned. For before certain men came from James, he was eating with the Gentiles. But when they came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. And the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him, so that even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. But when I saw that their conduct was not in step with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas before them all, if you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you force the Gentiles to live here? And so really, if you understand the context, again, Paul had been theologically preaching that we are justified by faith. And yet he comes back to Antioch, and Peter was hanging out with Gentiles. Now, my pastor, Tony Evans, we live in Dallas, go to Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship Church, and he was saying Peter had never had a pork chop before. Like, he said this was the thing. He found out that they served pork chops. And they were sitting there eating, and Peter was enjoying himself eating pork. And like, wow, man, this is some good stuff. You know how it is when you go to other people's houses and you experience their food. And so here, they're dining, they're eating with each other. And I'll very well imagine that there's some pork on Peter's plate. And he's enjoying this. And everybody said, wait a minute, if he eat it, I'm going to eat it. And they all get in. They start eating pork chops and gravy and all this stuff. They're like, man, this is some good stuff. But then those Judaizers, the circumcision party, they come, and it's like, did they say we could eat pork chops now? And he's like, oh man, I don't even want to have this type of conversation. I don't want to be like have this type of conflict. So let me just ease on away. Okay, let me try to get away from this situation. But watch what the impact was. It says even Barnabas. It's saying like Barnabas had maybe the best heart of all of them. It's kind of like is what the text is implying here. And it said even Barnabas followed suit. And then it said and the rest. And why is this important? Because here Paul is saying, first of all, I want to be theologically correct. But equally as important is that I'm also practicing the right way. And unfortunately, you know what? In the American gospel, in the gospel that we have subscribed to, those two have not always gone together. I care more about my orthodoxy than my orthopraxy. And to me, those things, how can they exist? How can those things, I even hate saying orthopraxy because to me, it should just be orthodoxy. And that's it. Because right thinking should lead to what? Right living, right practice. But oftentimes, guess what? We have been so content with being theologically correct that we've been socially incompetent.
It's much more easier it's much more convenient to not delve into the mess, right? And so I mean, as you said, as I said, there's things that our families and our upbringing have trained us. And I don't know, you've probably seen it. There's this great video of this little black boy and little white boy, and they see each other and they're excited, they run and meet. Like we did yesterday, I think. Yeah. And that's, I was faster, by the way. And so but it's that deal of we just see each other and there's a kindred spirit.
That's right.
That there's been places around the world that I've been fortunate to be, and there's this quickening of friendship because of brothers and sisters in Christ. There's something that draws us together and quickens friendships and the depth of the friendship because of that.
That's right.
And I do believe that because we've been trained up in certain ways, it makes us struggle sometimes loving our neighbor well.
That's right.
Even though our orthodoxy tells us
that's right.
there's something in there that we wonder,
right.
like Peter and Barnabas, there's peer pressure. There's this subtle peer pressure to, well, if you do this and you start moving in this direction, what are people going to think about you?
Right.
And then they're going to start, and of course, in today's American culture, it's like, oh, is the preacher, if he preaches on this, then he's leaning left, and he's preaching on this, he's leaning right. And we've politicized things that are, yes, they're political, but even more importantly, they're scriptural.
That's right. Absolutely.
And so this is, again, one of those topics of, man, if Chris has KaRon here talking, he's leaning left.
That's right.
And it's like, you know what? If I'm leaning left because I'm saying love Jesus and love my brother.
It's easy to divide us. It's easy to divide us. And again, the focus on, hey, let me make sure I'm right theologically.
Yeah.
You know, at the same time, my neighbor is suffering. At the same time, my neighbor right outside here is really asking for help.
Yeah.
And this is not a political issue.
No.
This is humanity.
Right.
This is Imago Dei. This is us being able to look at another human being and say, you know what, you are worth just as much as me. Yeah. And so what I'll do is just a few things from the conversations that I've had. I've talked to my own friends and we have talked and said, what, you know, I'm going to be in a position where I can speak to people and give them a different perspective. What would you want me to tell them? And so here are some of the things that I've heard. The first thing that was really, it was probably the most impactful, and it was simply this: as white people talking to white people concerning the issues that we're dealing with right now. And the first thing that they said, for talking to a white person, says, "Don't feel guilty for being white." Yeah. Like this is like you should not have to apologize for being white. But on top of that, don't pity me for being black. Don't feel like you need to feel sorry for me and that you need to save me, that you need to help me, because that only adds to the racism that we feel exists in this world today. But if you're apologizing for being white, then you don't really understand the solution. Because really the anger is not about you being white. The anger is more related to you don't understand the privilege that has come with you being white. And it's a hard word. It's tough because I know that has been thrown out so many times. And I frankly said, I don't think white people like the word white privilege. I don't think they want to hear it. I don't think they like that word. And frankly, I don't think they fully understand it. And so my suggestion has been, don't attack white people for being privileged. Like it's not for us, because you know what? The whole Drew Brees thing, and I said, you know what? I would want my son to be proud of my granddad as well if he served in the Army, which he did. Right? But the incompleteness of what Drew Brees was saying is that he didn't understand what was going on the other side of the track. When his granddad was being celebrated on the other side of the track, that was a different story for black people. And that's the part that we're trying to communicate now. And it's not just we're angry at white people. It's not that we're angry at the America that we live in. We're just saying, you know what? We want to count as well. Like our story is not just history. It's who we are. It's who we have become. This is a part of our formation, just like you. Like we belong here. You know, and we're fighting for equality. We want to have the same opportunities. The other thing is, and this is something that's really important, and I really appreciate Chris for inviting me, and I'm not saying this because I think this is what he's doing, but here's the key. Do not depend on your black friends to inform you of everything related to being black. Like, don't go have to talk to a black person to figure out why everybody's so upset. Like, you want to know why people are upset? It's because this man has a daughter, and this man is a child of a father and mother, and he's dead. Does that not resonate with you? So if you don't understand that type of anger, that type of injustice, like, you don't really need to talk to a black person to figure why there's anger in the streets. Sure. Like, that's a heart issue. And then from that heart issue, guess what? You can actually go on your own and discover what it's like to be a black person. You can. Just Google it. Right? What is it like to be a black person? I haven't done it, but I'm sure something will come up.
Everybody's going to start doing it. That's the most Googled thing.
I mean, for real, you know? And I'm sure there's going to be something to help you, but it's not hard to figure out what it's like to be a black person. And you don't have to depend on black people to tell you what that's like. Because now we are in such a sensitive environment to where, guess what? As a white person, if you mess up, you might get crucified. And I don't think that's in the heart of every white person. You know, but again, when they're speaking from a privilege, when they're speaking from a lack of awareness, they may say something and they don't get a second chance because of the world that we live in today.
There's definitely a fear, and I've told you this, of, okay, what can I say? What can I not say? I can't be silent. I mean, it's because there's almost this sense of there's really no right thing right now. And so how do you communicate, well, hey, I love everyone, and I'm trying to inform myself, not be totally dependent, like you said, upon you, but, you know, books and get all this different stuff and trying to inform myself on, again, being a part of the solution to all of this, because it's not just one little facet. I mean, it's multiple issues.
Which is why it's important that we don't attack each other when we make a mistake.
Right.
You know, and that is what I'm saying. Yeah. Don't attack someone for something they may not be completely aware of. Right. You know, understand where they're coming from, and then, you know what, as a black person, you know what, I'm in a position to maybe help you, to influence you, so that you can understand things that I'm going through, things that we're going through. And the same is true on the opposite side.
Right. I think part of it is, again, our culture right now is highly politicized, and so many see it as a political issue. Yeah. And as you and I have said, it's the political thing has been impacted because of our heart issue. And so if our heart is in the right place, and we're trying to understand ourselves and each other, then there's this spirit of empathy. You know, the biblical idea of empathy, of literally putting on your skin and getting in your shoes and putting on your lenses and thinking through what would it be like for me to have the same conversation with my son that you have with your son. And all the different conversations that we have differently, just kind of begin to grasp as best we can, because we can't fully get it, but if we get pieces of it, then it helps us deepen our friendship, deepen the move forward to everyone being equal.
And guess what? This is the starting point for us to have uncomfortable conversations. Yes. For us to be willing to be uncomfortable, because guess what? You know, you're talking about it, I'm talking about it, maybe not to each other, but we're having these conversations, so why not us go ahead and get together and let's talk about it together? Yeah. You know, so that we can find out, you know, what our struggles are. And maybe each of us will learn from each other and grow from it. And then my last point was this, is that, and what was at stake here, let's make no mention about it. The gospel was at stake with Paul and Peter. Right. You know, Paul was very concerned that he would get it wrong. And make no mistake, if this was right, what Peter was doing, Paul would have said, you know what, I can't associate either with the Gentiles. And I'm not going to eat any pork either, right?
Which would have made the gospel defunct. I mean, it would be over.
That's right.
Yeah.
But he stood. Now remember, Peter is what? The Rock?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay? Peter is like the guy.
Yeah.
Okay? In Jerusalem, he is the guy. And Paul confronts him and says, hey man, you are on the wrong side of this.
Yeah.
Like you are on the wrong side of this, and you may not have said it with your words, but with your silence and your behavior, you are guilty, Peter. And I can't stand for it. And really, that is what black people are asking for. This is not a black issue. This is not something that's dedicated for black people only. This is an issue to say, listen, if you want to get the gospel right, and you don't care about my life, then you're wrong. This is not politics. This is not about Black Lives Matter. This is about Imago Dei. This is about me and you. This is about all of us together. And when you continue to go on in the book of Ephesians, guess what? One another. Let's build it together. The Holy Temple. All of these things are saying, guess what? I have crashed this dividing wall. I have killed this system of divisiveness and all of this segregation. And I've created no wall with one new man, and together we are going to build a church for the glory of God.
Amen. Keep preaching.
And so when you think about that, guess what? If we can reflect it in here, then guess what? It'll be easier for it to be reflected there. But if we get it wrong here without being confronted, without the realization that guess what? I'm not getting this right. Now people still have to choose what they want to do, but at least let's be on the right side of this. People can make their own choices. And so here's what I would say with this. As a church, no matter who you are, we all have a civic role as well. And the frustration, especially among African Americans, is that guess what? Our churches are filled with people who love God. These same people have civic responsibilities and civil roles that are contributing to systematic racism in the world we live in. An example, the economics, the redlining of communities. Like, how many people sit on boards that say, you know what, hey, we don't really want them to live here, so let's make our homeowner fees like $2,500. That'll keep them away. Like, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And we're saying that, you know what? You're keeping us out of a place because you don't want our kids to mix with your kids. You don't want my son to date your daughter. So we're going to continue to separate. We're going to continue to keep black folks over here, Hispanic folks over there, and white folks over here. When the black people come in, we're moving out. Why won't you stand for that civically if you can stand for it in the church? And I think as a pastor, as a Christian, that's the thing that hurts me probably the most, is that there are not enough people that are willing, like Paul, to confront a Peter outside of church.
I think we've sanitized the gospel. Because I think about that story, and I imagine it was extremely uncomfortable.
Oh, no doubt.
And that Paul, being the type A personality he was, he didn't go, hey, Peter, come here, let's have a little talk in the corner. A little discussion. He was like, grabbed him
in front of everybody
by the robes and said, listen, dude, you got it wrong. And it probably came close to fisticuffs, if not. I mean, we don't get that part, but I imagine there was a scuffle of like, dude, this is the whole reason that Christ gave his life. This is the gospel.
That's right.
And that we can eat with anyone.
That's right.
The only thing that's an idol is something that replaces worshiping God. And if we're going to have pork chops and gravy, let's have seconds.
That's
right.
That's right.
And so the good news is that we can all be at the cross at equal level.
That's right.
And because we're created in the image of God and be able to do that. And so, man, we do that with the gospel in the church. One of the things I don't like about preaching sometimes is we sanitize things and we kind of wrap it in a bow. We give 3 points and push it because we've got 30 minutes.
That's right.
And we want people to apply it.
That's right.
But not really to settle into some of the uncomfortable conversations. And as you're saying, make impact civically in our home.
Which is why we were often reminded of the one another.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just love, it was like one another.
One another, yeah.
Right? I mean, love is a great idea. It's a great concept. Okay? But the practice, as we know, is very difficult.
Yeah.
right? I mean, even with someone that I love very dearly. Me and my wife have been married for 20 years. And guess what? There are times when it's really difficult to love.
Yeah.
And the same is true, guess what, with different people that are not like us. But guess what? That is what love is.
Yeah.
That is what love does. It is not simply saying, hey, listen, man, you drink coffee, I drink coffee, let's get together. Like, you drink coffee and I'm drinking water.
Right.
And we're still here. We're getting together. You know, don't
I'm working on you.
I know what I'm saying. I know you're going to try to convert me, but I don't drink coffee right now. But guess what? We can still get together.
Yeah.
You know, so if your whole model is built around something that doesn't exist for everybody, my question has always been, is it more about them or is it more about you?
Yeah.
You know, do I need to be most comfortable? Or am I willing to be uncomfortable for the sake of the gospel? Am I willing to carry out my role and my responsibility outside of the church, which I know that we probably want to wrap this up soon, but there's really two questions that I really wanted to leave with. I think we kind of set a real good basis for it, but really the question I think that Paul was even maybe digging a little bit deeper with Peter on is that how much of Jesus does he have? I mean, how much have you allowed Jesus to have in your life? Because theologically, we say, I've given it all to him, right? Because we all want to go to heaven. But what about socially and culturally? Like, has Jesus been given that same right away? Has he been given the same opportunity to really confront the biases, confront the things that you are proud of? Like I'm saying, don't be ashamed of where you've come from and what you've done. Even, acknowledge even the mistakes that have happened in the past and in your life. But have you given that to Jesus? Like, have you really allowed Jesus to have all of that as well? Theologically, we all raise our hands. Like, I'm justified by faith alone in Christ. Like I'm going to heaven. Okay? But is Jesus enough to help us be uncomfortable in our relationship? Is Jesus enough for me to be what Paul was to Peter and to confront my brother, to confront my friend, to confront someone that I love and say, man, listen, I love you like a brother, but you are on the wrong side of this thing. This is not about being a Republican. This is not about being a Democrat. This is not whether this man deserved to die. This is not about how many kids he has. This is not about what drugs was in his system. This is not about any of those things besides, guess what? That man should either be in jail or that man should be at home, but he should not be in the grave. And that's at the core of what we're fighting for. That's at the core of what we're hoping for, that you know what? That we can make mistakes too and still come home. It's that simple. But for us as the church, we have to have a desire to be even more than what we are today. It's great that we get built up, but you know what? This is not just for us. And we know that, right? But guess what? The expression of that is difficult, and it's intentional. Sure. I mean, I'm actually black and gray, and that's what I've always done until somebody says, hey man, you need to wear some blues and some reds. Because this is what I'm comfortable with. Yeah. But, I need some color in my life. I mean, it helps me, it brightens my face up, and, makes me look more appropriate. I need that. Yeah. So, what we're asking is something probably that's not natural, but something that we have to be more aware of.
Sure. I mean, that's one of the reasons we've here, as we prayed through what's the vision moving forward for Crosspoint, is that phrase, love does, just kept ringing with us as leaders. And part of that is because there's areas that we feel like God's calling us to go in the future. We don't even know all of those, but that there's this uncomfortableness about moving to those next places, that for all of us at different levels, the gospel calls us to count the cost and it's going to be extravagant, right? Jesus' love for us was so extravagant it cost him his life. And so for us also to fulfill the gospel, we have to be extravagant with our love. And that love is, as you stated, it's a choice. It's a choice. Right? It's not a feeling. I mean, there may be feelings, butterflies. When you first saw your wife, you're like, yeah, God, you did good, right? Yeah. So there were feelings. But there's this daily choice to love and to love deeper Because as we do life longer together, we see the scars, we see the stuff, and we continue to choose to love. And one of the things that I've talked about with some others is that God calls us to love others, not like them.
That's right.
And so there's times that we have to get into the mess,
That's right.
and we choose to love because we're in the process of being with them and healing.
That's right.
But that doesn't mean we have to, we're not maybe not be best buddies and hang out afterwards, but we're going to do some life together in a season because we love each other.
Absolutely, and I think again it's the connection again of not just here, but it's the way that we live our lives. And being honest, like, you know what? Am I okay if our church becomes integrated with a black kid, like looking at my daughter and giving her the wink? Like,
The googly eye.
Like, yeah, like, ooh, wow, you are beautiful. I mean, like, how you gonna deal with that?
Yeah,
You know what I
that's
mean?
a legitimate question.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. Like, but that's the question that is there.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you if I say that that's not there even for me.
Yeah.
My son, like, he's googly-eyed, I mean, let's be real about that, But again, what does that create? A conversation to say, you know what? It's okay to be attracted to someone that's in a different race from you. And let me tell you why. If you see them as being a beautiful person, if you see them as a Christian and they can complement your life and help you to get where you want to get, I mean, what's the problem? Well, he's black. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but that gets us to Martin Luther King's dream.
That's right.
It's content of character.
That's right.
And so for us as followers of Jesus, I mean, that's the number one question. I mean, do they love Jesus?
That's right.
And I mean, truly love Jesus in a way that it is impacting their character and that he or she is going to be a great parent to the grandkids and to treat you well and all. As we know, just because you're a Christian, that means it's going to be roses, right?
With no extension of family.
we're still humans.
That's right.
So we're in process of being redeemed or reconciled. And so, but yeah, I mean, those are those meaty questions that are practical. Rubber meets the road. Whenever you check your own heart of whenever we say, "Oh, I'm not racist," and then put your kids in it and go.
And being honest and say the reason why my kids are not here is because they're black people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're not going to this school because there are black people there.
Yeah.
So you're going to go over here, not because there's a better teacher, not because there's a better principal, not because this is a college prep. It's because there's no black people over here. So this has to be better. And that's something that we're still struggling with today when you look at our school system, when you look at where black kids go, where white kids go, and where the resources go.
Yeah.
And we're wondering why we're having these struggles in certain communities because you don't have the same opportunities. So not saying that anyone needs to save us, right? And that's the key. Is there, I've not met a black person that says, "Man, will you please tell white people to come save us?" Like I have not met any black person that said that. Yeah. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
Like I don't want you to pity me. I don't want you to feel sorry for me, but I do want you to recognize me. Yeah. And that's more important than almost anything. Is just a recognition of, you know what? There's something here. Yeah. And I got to be honest about it.
Sure.
You know what? I'll be honest with you, about 20 years ago, this board, this city, set up a place for black people to live.
Yep.
And the schools are poor because you don't get any of these tax money. Like this was created 50 years ago when banks started lending money.
Yeah.
They said, this is how we want it to be. Yeah. And to be naive about it is to say, wow, man, I just found a nice house or I found, well, no, you got a loan. I couldn't get a loan. Yeah. You started a business. I couldn't start a business because I didn't own a home. You use your home to leverage, get a home equity loan. And guess what? That started your business or it saved your business or you sent your kid to college with a home equity loan. I don't own a home. Yeah. So that domino of this lack of opportunity is systemic and is affecting also my kids and the opportunities I have because I don't own a home. And where I can't afford a home, guess what? The appraisals are not going up. Yeah. I'm at 100% loan. I don't have any equity. I can't leverage that money out. Right. You know, so there are some things that we have to look at practically as well. And if we can help someone, I believe it's our responsibility to do so.
Well, hey, I'm going to push pause for just a second. We'll continue the conversation, but we've hit like 11 o'clock, and so we're in between services. And so I just want to say, hey, thanks for joining us. It's 11 o'clock, and so now we're into our second service. And so, again, my name is Chris. I'm the lead pastor here at Crosspoint Community Church. And today's a unique Sunday for us as we begin a series entitled Colorblind. And we invited my friend KaRon Coleman, who's a pastor and currently teacher and coach as well, and a dad of 6. And so we need to pray for him just about that. And we were talking even last night about how expensive it is to try to feed and keep up. And you got those little lunch trays, and you're like, kids, this is your little square of food. To be able to do that. But so we're in the midst of a raw but important conversation on race relationships, but even more than that, just how can we together show people that we're all created in the image of God, and that we have a desire as Christians in particular to pursue Jesus, and how that impacts how we love, right? And this idea of choosing to love others. And so I want to say thank you for taking some time out of your Sunday and joining us. And we're just going to continue the conversation if that's okay. So hopefully if you haven't been a part of the earlier service, you can go back and you can watch that at a later time. But we'll just continue this conversation for a little bit longer together. So KaRon, just again, tell us a little bit about yourself again, and then we'll keep digging in.
Okay, so, I was born and raised in Houston, Texas, and, from there, went to Elkins High School, and then I went to Stephen F. Austin, played football there. That's where I met my wife, and, when my eligibility was done, I always had a desire to play in the NFL, and, had that opportunity with the Denver Broncos. I was undrafted, and, it was just an incredible time. You always dream and hope that, you can reach your dreams, but the older you get, the harder you realize how hard it's going to be. Especially coming from a smaller school and, not getting a whole lot of upfront money, you realize, they really don't need me. And so the only way I'm going to make it is if I make myself valuable. And so really, there is not an opportunity to have a day off. There's not an opportunity to say I'm tired. There's not an opportunity to say, maybe I want to play a different position. Coach, you underestimated me. No, you have to go to work every day, and you have to earn every penny. You have to earn every rep, every opportunity. And so, that just created in my mindset, being a smaller guy, I felt disrespected. I played with a chip on my shoulder. It's like, I'm still like, this is something that I'm about to prove, and I'm gonna prove it every day. And so, just having that discipline really carried me through, and I, had a heart for God, wanted to serve God, wanted to help people. I knew football was that platform to be able to do that, but I wanted to do it more intentionally and in a way that, discipleship, just being able to carry the gospel in a way that people understood it, and they can make it their own. So I went to Bible college, went to seminary. We started planting churches. We planted one in Missouri City. Then we moved to Colorado, planted another one there in Colorado. Which is where we met. Recently, we were in Alabama. We have some family land there. We got an opportunity to live on the land, something we've always desired as a family. I pastored a small rural church, mainly African-American church. And each one of those experiences, though, really has created even more of a passion about multicultural ministry and really what it would take for that to actually happen, And so I've always been an advocate for it in Missouri City. I was an advocate for it in Colorado, even in Alabama. I've always, tried to be welcoming of other people, and it didn't always happen, but it was something that people always heard from me. And I think that is something that's very important because, sometimes, you don't really know, unless you've been told. You're not really aware unless someone is really speaking into your life, And I think as pastors, that's something that's very important for us to continue to remind our congregations of the things that are essential, of the things that are important. you know. And so those are the things for me that carries me now, even though I'm a coach and you know, I'm a teacher, you know, and I still have a level of influence in different people's lives. I still try to use my voice to really advocate, you know, the totality of the gospel in the sense of what this looks like on a daily life.
I think about what you said of you know, not being the star guy, right? I mean, you were behind, I won't say who it was, but he was a star, right? Hall of Fame running back.
That's right.
And every day you're like, is this my last day? And this sense of belonging.
That's right.
And you knew you belonged.
That's right.
But continually trying to help to show other people I belong.
That's right.
And that most of us in some way, I think we have that desire. Like we want to belong.
Absolutely.
And we're working to show other people our worth and our value.
That's right.
So how does that play into this discussion today of what we're talking about, being colorblind and race relations?
Well, I think, you know, the thing that we focused on in the first part is that, you know, we talked about being theologically accurate, but also there's a possibility we can be socially incompetent.
Yeah.
And that's really a part of the culture that we live in the American gospel. Like you said, a sanitized version where it's very clean.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing dirty about it. You know, we don't really desire to be uncomfortable in our faith. If you're uncomfortable, that's a sign that this may not be the church for you.
That's right. They're going to cut the tide.
You know, let's start looking around a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that it's important that we understand that's these one another passages, that it's the reminder, because it's not easy to love people. It's not easy to love someone that you have things in common with, more or less to love someone that you don't have a lot in common with. But again, over and over, we see in Scripture. In Micah 6:8, here's another scripture you can write down, and you can read the context of it, but here's what it says. It says, "He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice and to love kindness." And so really, it's just a simplified executive order.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, you think you need to sacrifice. The context was, hey, how many rams should I sacrifice? How many goats should I sacrifice? Lord, would you be pleased with this if I bring this to the altar? And the simplified execution, like, was just, hey, listen, the Lord requires of you to do justice and to love kindness. And so for us to be absent, to be theologically sound, but to not care about justice in our society is saying, you know what, you missed the executive order. Like you've really missed the summation of the gospel, not saying that you can be, not saying that you cannot be guilty of being so socially oriented that you know, misuse the gospel, because we know that can happen, but we're also saying that there is an alignment as well that needs to happen with all of us. That yes, theologically we need to be right, but also socially and culturally, like we're being challenged over and over through Scripture to be right with God. And so in saying that, I pivot to Ephesians chapter 2. I mentioned it, but if you understand the book of Ephesians, you have the same dynamic where Paul is building these theological structures, these theological paradigms, but then verses starting in chapter 3, it's all about the orthopraxy. It's like, this is what it actually looks like, and there's discipline, there's all kind of things of love and what it's really like to love a church, but it's very important in setting this paradigm in Ephesians chapter 2 and Paul speaking of the ministry of Jesus actually acknowledging that there is a wall that exists between us. I think that's the reality, is that if Jesus had to break it down, he's also acknowledging that there is something that is between us. And that's hard to imagine. But the reality is that we know that there was this court, right, within the split, the Jews and the Gentiles, and what it was in worship, it was a place to keep Gentiles over here and Jews over here. And Jesus said, you know what, I've actually come to tear this thing down. Yeah. But think about that as a church that has to tear something down. No one would go to it. Yeah. We want to only build and not tear down, but guess what? The construct of the gospel is, look, we need to break it down to build it up. Because that's exactly what Jesus did. I'm going to break down this wall and I'm going to build a new wall, but guess what? There's no longer going to be two, there's only going to be one. But yet there was the acknowledgement that guess what? This wall has to be broken down. Now theologically, guess what? We know that this was broken down, right? Because now we have access to heaven. So guess what? My vertical alignment with God, hey, we're good. Jesus, thank you. Jesus paid it all, right? He did it, right? So guess what? I'm good. But now what about this? What about the horizontal? What about my relationships with the Jews and the Gentiles? What about my relationship? That's harder. Did he break it down? Yes. But the barrier still exists. And so now, guess what? We got this right, but we have to spend the rest of our lives trying to work on this. It's not like yesterday, it's not just today, it's the rest of our lives. And Jesus is reminding us of it. Like literally acknowledging these walls exist socially, religiously, and even culturally. Like there are things that, you know what, I'm not going to like about you. And I can either use that to justify my separation, or I can use to say, you know what, let's try to overcome this. Like, man, I got to get over that you're drinking coffee and I'm drinking water. Can I get over this so that me and you can still stand on this stage together, or are we going to have to take turns speaking? You talk to the coffee crowd, I'll talk to the water crowd.
I'll win then.
But that's what it's speaking of, those type of things that guess what? Our culture can build for us. Like the culture builds this division. Our culture keeps telling us that, you know what, hey, don't worry about being a Christian, you know, right now when it comes to politics. Just if you're a Republican, you know, just be all in with them, whoever it is, no matter what. Same if, you know, if you were black and you're not a Democrat, then you're not black. Right, I mean, you know, and so we're talking the same as you white. You can't be a Democrat if you're white. Yeah. You know, so our society keeps throwing these messages and building these walls that continue to separate us. And guess what? We have to keep tearing them down.
Yeah, I remember sitting in a seminary class, and it was a missiology class of missions and the study of missions, and the professor brought in this poster, this gigantic poster. There's all these different pictures, and they look similar, but there's some distinctiveness along the way. And it was the portraits of Jesus around the world.
Yes.
And I was like, whoa, that is powerful. Because, you know, like in the back of the seminary class, there was the sweetest Jesus. You know, he had blue eyes and brown hair and stuff. And that's what's been propagated so many times. And even the thought of, you know, in the white congregation, I think many times we assume that Adam and Eve were white.
That's right. That's right.
And they probably weren't.
And that's what we were told. Like, I mean, there's no black people in the Bible. You know what I mean?
Well,
or the black people were cursed.
The curse, right? The curse of Ham. And so that's how the Southern Baptists would theologically be able to keep this, here's white people, here's African American people, we can do slaves because they've been cursed.
That's right.
And it's our God-given responsibility to hold them under that curse.
They called it the white man's burden.
Yeah.
And it was the white man's burden that led Christopher Columbus and all of these people that were under the cover of missionary trips to save Indians and to save all these other cultures from hedonism and killing themselves and being inappropriate. The white man had to save the whole world. Right. And that has perpetrated our culture. Like, that is something that is still evident. And that when black people are talking about systematic racism, we're talking about from the very beginning, because that was the culture of everything. Is that white man had a burden to basically save the world, to save everyone that was unlike him, to convert him to their way of life. Yeah. And the gospel was a part of that.
Sure.
But economics was a big part of it too.
Yeah, oh, definitely, definitely. Well, I mean, historically, unfortunately, one of the reasons that white slave owners in particular would even share the gospel was to calm down.
That's right.
And to, to make them less heathen or whatever that mindset was.
That's right.
But obviously there was a liberation theology
Yep.
that came out of that. And so a lot of the songs
That's right.
that are wonderful, songs and stuff came out of that mindset. And so again, it's just that discussion of our background. Each one of us have different backgrounds, what we're taught, what we're, the visuals of different things. And even thinking about this idea of a picture is that, there's this picture here behind us, and this is a limited view of what is really happening because you don't get to see what's behind. And so our history books, our whoever has been, teaching us and talking to us has a limited perspective.
That's right.
And so if it's this perspective, then we're not getting all of it. And,
No.
and the media does that today.
That's right.
In particular, they kind of feed different things, and even history books have done that as well.
That's right.
And so there's this, for us today, we have Google, and we have a lot of resources at our fingertips to be able to love one another. And I think about, we've talked a little bit about orthodoxy and orthopraxy, and that really Jesus simplified all of the religiousness, all of what it meant to be a follower of Jesus. He basically said in Matthew 25, right? If you love God with all of your heart, you claim to love Him with all of your heart, then love does.
That's right.
So if you claim to love God here, then it will impact here.
That's right.
And so that we begin to love each other as much as we love ourselves. Now we struggle with that sometimes too, but go ahead.
Well, that's the construct. So when you look at Ephesians chapter 2, there are 3 barriers. There are 3 barriers that this passage is speaking of. It's speaking first of the barrier that we have with God.
Yeah.
Okay, then it speaks of this barrier that we have with each other. And then there's this last barrier, that's this barrier within ourselves. And each one, if you're looking at Ephesians chapter 2, Jesus is saying, I have an answer for all 3.
Yeah.
But the essence is that the essence of it is that understanding that when Jesus is our peace, guess what? That means that there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there would be no need of peace if we already had peace.
Yeah.
So we're talking about hostility. We're talking about conflict. We're talking about segregation. We're talking about issues that will divide us, issues that will continue to keep our focus where Jesus said, I'm going to take care of that if you let me.
Yeah.
Like I've already taken care of this now. You washed. You clean. Right? You're going to heaven. You've been justified by faith alone. But this right here, hey, listen, it's going to get dirty. It's going to get nasty. And every day I have to remind you that I am your peace. So when you're uncomfortable, when you're angry, when your protest leads you to riot, when your protest leads you to break things and want to fight, I mean, there is legitimate anger in the black community today where literally just saying, you know what, I just want to tear up something. Yeah. I want to tear it down. And that anger is legitimate, but at the same time, my question, and this is for all of us, is how much does Jesus have? Does He have our politics? Does He have our social life? Does He have our culture? Like you said, I'm so proud to be a black man.
Yeah.
I'm not apologizing for being a black man at all.
Yeah.
But there are times when I got to confront my own blackness. Because I'm a Christian first.
Right.
And I think that's the reality of the gospel as Christians, that we have been unwilling to check our whiteness or our blackness because we've allowed the culture of these division walls to be so large that we cannot see over on the other side. Drew Brees never knew what was going on across the tracks. And that's a responsibility that we have. It's a responsibility that we have for all of us that, you know what, we have to care enough about people that we are interested in what's going on in their lives. And guess what? Like you said, they teach us in missions. The Southern Baptists have it, if not 100%, but about 95% correct when it comes to preparing us for the mission field. Because everything we do there is what we should be doing here.
Right.
We're taught literally not to impose our culture on whoever we're going to reach.
Right.
And yet, when we're here, that's all we care about, it seems, more than even the gospel.
We flip it here in the States because one, it's attached to money.
That's right.
I mean, you and I know that. And so in Denver, we planted churches together, and he planted a predominantly African-American congregation, and that's why you were recruited.
That's right.
And so when I was planting, it was assumed that, hey, I'm in the suburbs and I'm planting a predominantly white congregation. Why? Because, as we said, birds of a feather flock together.
That's right.
And you can grow quicker, the numbers, and there's a financial component, and there's a variety of different things. But whenever you go overseas, we encourage you to submerge yourself in that culture. And if you're in China, man, you know Chinese history, you know the language, you know the stuff.
Food.
Yeah, I mean, you're in it. And so that literally you begin to think and act and everything as far as a person that's in China.
That's right.
Almost indistinguishable.
That's right.
But other than your ethnicity or all that. But people are drawn to you because you've loved them so well by the immersion that you've put yourself into that community.
So I kind of have just in my thought right now, I'm just thinking about kind of some type of litmus test.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things this probably is something that's kind of been a justifier, for some behavior, is someone would say, hey, listen, I have black friends. Like I grew up with black people, or you know what, I don't have any problem with black people. Okay? So my litmus test would be, though, can that black person be honest with you?
Yeah.
I think that's the key. Like, can that black person say, hey man, you know what, you made me really uncomfortable when you made that joke.
Yeah.
About, being colored. Like if that person is not comfortable with having those conversations, then that means that I'm telling you right now that he feels like, you know what, there's something in your heart that's not right.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that's what we talk about.
Sure.
Like, we have to deal with our daily lives in a way that it feels like we don't belong.
Yeah.
So much of our culture or much of our behavior has to be compromised sometimes just to be professional.
Yeah.
So that we won't have things imposed on us or consequences imposed on us. I don't want to be the angry black guy.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't want to be the angry black woman.
Sure.
But she gets angry, I get angry just like everyone else. But for whatever reason, in my anger, you might see something completely different. Yeah. And so if I'm not able to have that conversation with you and to be honest with you, then I'm telling you, your friend is saying that, you know what, I have felt a certain way about you and about the way that we have been around each other, where I cannot be honest with you. And to me, those are problems.
Yeah. Well, it would be no matter the ethnicity, right?
That's right.
And so if we're truly friends with one another, we can speak the truth in love. And we've had a tendency to sanitize friendships and sanitize church, as we've talked about. And a part of that is we want to love well, and so we never tell the truth.
Well, why avoid that? I guess that's, where we are today is because we've avoided it.
Oh, I agree, yeah.
And I think that we can't afford to avoid it because I don't feel offended being here with you. And I don't think that you feel offended with some of the things that I've said, you know? And so I think that, for us to be able to have these conversations is really the beginning. And for all of us, I don't think it's that hard for you to, if you have a black friend, and say, hey, listen, can I talk to you? Yeah. Like, can I just have a real honest conversation with you? Yeah, it may cost you $10. Go take them to lunch or something like that,
Sure.
But it's worth it. Yeah. Just to say, hey, look, man, like, what did you do? You reached out to me, and really that was the start. Is like, man, I'm kind of struggling. I don't really know if I should say something, if I shouldn't say something, what should I do? And then guess what? That started our engagement, and it was simply because you said, you know what, man, let me just try to talk to KaRon about, because he has to be hurt too, because I'm hurting. And I'm seeing all of this stuff, and so I wonder what he's thinking about. Yeah. If you have friends, that even may not be the friend you want them to be, they possibly could become during this time just by simply talking to them.
Yeah. Well, again, I think more and more in our culture, we're connected through media, but we're not truly connected.
No.
Because again, we count the cost, and it's too costly. We're fearful of some conversations, and again, I think it's a fear of, and I don't mind you pointing out things that make me uncomfortable, but in some ways, like, I don't even want to offend you or vice versa. And
That's
so
right.
on both sides.
That's right.
And so, but a true friendship, you're able to say, hey, you know, and be able to speak some of those things in me, or vice versa, to chisel us away.
That's right.
Because and part of that comes through time, right? Through trust and friendship, and know that for both of us, anything we say to one another that's deep, that's going to chip away at each other, we know that it comes out of a place of love and not out of a place of harm or anger.
And that means something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that changes our relationship.
Right.
You know, it takes away the surface, and you know what? It makes me human. It makes you human.
Yeah.
You know, and the absence of that keeps the relationship surface. The absence of that keeps the elephant in the room.
Right.
You know, and so to have these meaningful relationships, you know, but again, it's about what Jesus did. Jesus established the opportunity for us to do it.
Right.
Right? But guess what? Chris, you had to reach out to me, and I had to be willing to say, you know what? I'm not mad at Chris. You know, I'm not mad at every white person. You know what? I'm going to engage Chris. I'm going to talk to Chris. It's like, you know what? I'm talking to my other friends so that he may be able to help other people with understanding the issues that we're dealing with and the things that are going on in our communities.
Right.
You know? And I think that those are the things that help us. But when you go back and you look at Ephesians chapter 2, you see this language of togetherness, this one man, fellow citizens, members, joined together, holy temple, built together. And again, guess what? It was all for God. And just imagine that, Chris. You know? I mean, I would expect right now if our kids were small again, you know, like if they were all 4 and 5, I know my little girl, Chloe, that's 6, she doesn't care what color you are. If you have a bike, a scooter, a crayon, some chalk, you are her best friend.
That's right.
Like, you could be a boy, a girl.
Yeah.
It's like, they beg every day to go outside and play with our neighbors, and both of them are Hispanic, and they love those kids.
Yeah.
Because they just want to play.
Yeah, they're just kids.
But guess what? As we grow older, those barriers continue to build as well. And we start to realize, you know what? There is something different about us. And instead of continue to sit at the table and eat with each other,
right,
and stay at the table and work through some of these things, we say, no, man, you belong on this side of town, I belong on this side of town.
Yeah.
But again, this was all for the glory of God. And you can just imagine, you know, why or the reason of, and again, I take responsibility of why our community don't have it right. It's because we don't have it right. And I can think and really hope that as a church that we can get it right, and then they will follow. You know, and it's not completely your responsibility, nor the elders. Like, it takes everybody. The church is everybody involved. You know, if you're the pastor or black person come in, you shouldn't have to be the only one to go and welcome. And I know that our churches are built now where we welcome everybody. But I'm telling you right now, that black person that entered, they already know they're going to give up a whole lot.
So jump into that. What does that mean? What are you going to give up?
They're giving up, really, it's a black identity. It is a sense that, you know what, are these people here going to allow me to be black? Like, can I have a barbecue? Will you come over to my house?
Yeah.
Do I have to come over your house? Will you come over my house?
Okay.
Are we able to go eat lunch? If you invite him out to lunch, why haven't you invited me out? Because I'm sitting there and I hear your conversations.
Yeah.
You're talking about you went fishing,
Yeah.
you went hunting, your kids played together. You forgot my email? Do you know my phone number?
Here's my digits.
Hey, I wasn't on that list, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when it comes to a committee or some of these things that are going on in church, you know, it's like, you know what? I'm allowed to do certain things. So it literally, by me being black, you're saying, hey, this is where you're going to fit in. You know, I'm an educated black pastor. And I can tell you right now, if I applied for a Baptist job, I wouldn't even get a call back. Because they're saying that I'm not equipped to pastor a predominantly white church. And so the same thing is happening when someone comes in. They're wondering, hey, are they going to allow me to acclimate? Like, if it's just about who I am, if it's children ministry, if it's an elder, like, I mean, there's no black men that are qualified to be elders, you know, in white churches.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so, you know, what's going to be my roadmap? You know, and most black people are willing to compromise for the sake of something that's quality. But they shouldn't.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have to give up everything to sit under a good Bible teacher.
Sure.
And yet we realize, though, from our experiences that unfortunately white people are very uncomfortable with submitting to black leadership, which is why they would not submit to a black pastor. So a committee is made up of a membership, right? And that membership is saying, I'm uncomfortable, whether they're willing to say it verbally, but subconscious, they said, I cannot submit to a black man being my leader.
Yeah. Because the fear is, I'm just projecting here. The fear is, what does the white congregation have to give up?
Is it going to turn into a black church?
Yeah.
Look what I mean, I'm going to lose my seat. If he comes, that means they all come back. I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah,
right?
No, unfortunately,
it's a fear that's like, oh, there's one, and there's two, there's three, and now, oh, we got to go build another church.
It's not our church anymore.
It's not our church anymore.
Which is not our church anyway.
But that's always been the fear of black men.
Yeah.
You know, even with Hispanics, they're going to take my job. You know, they're going to take my position, you know. So the fear is like, oh man, not about you being illegal. Maybe, you know, those are a lot of argument things. But the reality is, you know what? We're fighting for the same job.
Yeah.
You know, now guess what? There's one more person that's going to be competing for my job. And to be honest, I don't deserve this job anyway. But you know, that's not the conversation. You know, that's something that's not being talked about, you know. But I'm telling you, when an ethnic person comes through a door, when they are the minority, they have already discussed, they have already probably admitted to themselves within each other that we're going to have to give up some stuff.
Yeah. I hate that. I mean, obviously you and I've talked about that, and so you went a little different route than what I had thought as far as the ability to lead and the ability to be in community with each other. In some ways, it's more of an predominantly African American church. Worship is a little different.
That's right.
And so I know that, again, as we talked earlier, that you and your wife have made some decisions along the way of, hey, we want to be in a predominantly white church, and so we've given up some of those things. And so can you dig?
And I would say the worship experience, you know, understanding theologically, is not really about the style.
Yeah.
You know, and so when you're talking about being a true worshiper, you know, we're everybody has different experiences. And so to me, music is not much of an obstacle as hospitality.
Yeah. That's a good word. That's a good word. Because I think most white people don't think that.
That is misunderstood because it is the thought that we care more about our worship style than the feeling that you are going to allow us to be ourselves. And if we are capable of being a leader, that we can be those things.
Yeah.
Like, that's not as important as that you can respect me and see me for who I am and give me an opportunity to do everything that you would give anybody else an opportunity to do. Yeah. I'm not asking to take over your worship team. Right. I'm not asking to bring tambourines or certain type of drums. You know, I mean, like, honestly, I just turned on the radio. Like, I mean, you know.
That's solvable, right?
I mean, you know, I mean, I'm not, that's not going to be something that's going to, this going to not make me and my wife go to a church because, hey, you know, they didn't have enough soul or enough rhythm. You know, now if it's starchy, you got to put some seasoning on it. You know, you can't have vegetables with, you know, you got to have some salt and pepper on it, something now.
You got to line it up.
You got to have something, you know. But it is true though that's part of the discussion. What are we willing? But it's more about though the relational side of it than it is about, now we do, you know, make sure that our kids are going to be ministered to,
Sure.
but most importantly, that they're not going to be black kids.
Yeah.
You know, that it's not going to be them and then them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
yeah, us then.
I was, unfortunately, I had this situation in a large church where I was the black pastor in a white church. So every kid that came through a door, there was a black kid, they said, hey, he's in your group, and this was life groups, and the kid wasn't even in my group.
Yeah.
But they say he must be in this guy's group because black people were starting to come.
Yeah.
And the thought was, he's got to be in that group. And so they would just usher kids over to me when it's like, man, you know what, I can talk to more than,
Like.
yeah, I mean, I know, like, if we talk English, I can talk to a white person too.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not speaking in a language that white person can't understand. You know, give me one or two white people and let's at least see how it works out. You know what I'm saying?
We might grow.
Yeah, I mean, man, let's give it a try. You know, but that's those are the type of things though. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like, okay, man, we got a black guy now, and
Yeah.
man, we're gonna grow a black congregation.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna get more black people because of this black guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And it's just ignorance.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, sometimes it's a willful ignorance to just say, hey, we're going to bring on a KaRon and so we can get more black people and feel good. But I love what you're saying about is just all ethnicities, we need to be community. This is the model for community here. If we can't love one another and do community here, then how can we do that outside of the church wall, so to speak?
Let the character and their content
Yeah.
create opportunities, not their skin color.
Right.
You know, and guess what? You only do that by building relationships with people,
Right.
by getting to know them, you know, and also too, sometimes, you know what, you do have to be intentional on giving them opportunities to be intentional about it because it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen by accident. So guess what? You may need to say, you know what? Hey, listen, I'm going to disciple. I'm going to, put this person in a leadership pipeline. You know, I'm going to do something to accelerate this person's growth because of the impact, knowing that the impact that he can make in the life of this church just by having his voice heard.
Right.
And I'm telling you, I think that what black people are asking for is really just to be heard. We're not fighting for a particular position or this. There are things that need to change in our legal system. You know, we're aware of that. But at the end of the day, when we're just saying, hey, listen, do you see me?
Yeah.
And if you do see me, can you tell me what you see?
Yeah.
Because if you don't see me as a man, if you don't see me as 100% man, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
But I need you to acknowledge that so we can just move past the reality of disrespect, the reality of racism, because it's not built on maybe the symptom is built on a core that you don't see me as a man. Maybe I'm 3/5, you know, maybe I'm half. But you don't see me as equal enough to respect me enough to be even willing to have a conversation with me, to sit down with me, to even give up some leadership, you know, so that it's beneficial to all, you know. So I think it's, you know, honestly, it's really not as tough because everybody makes their own choices. Like, no one can say I'm not black enough, you know, no one can tell me I'm going to define that for myself. Like, I'm that type of person. I don't care what anybody say. They can say, oh man, this guy went to a white church and he's talking. Like, I don't care. Yeah. Like, I'm still black. I didn't bleach my skin. Yeah. You know, I didn't change overnight. I'm still black. And no one is going to tell me that I'm not black because I'm here. Yeah. Or because my family went to a white church. Right. That's a decision that we made as a family for that particular time. And I know that it happens in a lot of other places, but it was intentional. Sure. It was something that we valued for our family, and we got to understand that, you know, some of the people that's coming in, they're making those same decisions. Yeah. Like, they just didn't like, oh, you know, hey, let's check out that church over there. Like, they're saying, you know what, I've heard that they got great teaching, that I can grow, You know, like, you know, there's a desire for not, like we, you know, like we want to grow. There's not a lot of churches that are really committed to teaching the Bible. And so when you find that church, you're willing to travel, you're willing to go places, you're willing to do things to get you uncomfortable, even if it's saying, I got to go outside my own race to get it. And that was something that we was willing to do based on what we had available during that time. And I think that there are a lot of people that would be willing to do it knowing that they would be accepted. Not that, I don't think you even need to promise. You don't need to promise anything. It's just a feeling of acceptance that you have from leadership all the way through.
Yeah. That you could easily, after being here a year or 2 or 3 or whatever, could become an elder.
That's right.
Based upon content of character, based upon your ability to teach, all those different things that would be. And one of the things we've talked about as well is one of the ways to help move diversity forward in a church is the stage has to look like what you want.
It helps.
It's not the solution.
It's not.
But it's the beginning. It could be the beginning of.
And as long as those people have a voice.
Yeah.
And that's the key. You know, visually it helps, but guess what? That person on that stage might say, hey guys, did y'all know that Juneteenth is coming up this week? Yeah. And in worship, we're not even acknowledging it. I haven't seen any screens. Yeah. So just Cinco de Mayo, whatever. You know, it's just like we have a lot of things that, you know, I don't understand, that we don't understand. And the only time maybe that you may is if someone else from a different perspective tell you. Now, we can't do everything in the church. We're all aware of that. But at the same time, to make some effort of doing something, it can go a long way with people.
Right. So, I mean, because here's what I think, is that when you and your bride have the same dreams or similar dreams for yourself as a couple and for your children that I have.
That's right. Absolutely. No doubt.
So whether that's educational, whatever those things are, and those are the things, finding common ground in those ways. Yeah.
And that's why people are willing to go to certain churches, because they feel like you can help them to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what's key. Like they're there, they have a need, and they feel like that you can help them. But sometimes it gets so difficult where you say, you know what, I would rather go somewhere where I don't have it, just so I can feel like I'm in, like I got some I have some community.
Because it's important. Community is important.
Extremely important, you know? And I think again, just those conversations, you know, the willingness to just to feel like you said, belong. You know, it's like I don't want to have to come into the church and feel like I need to prove myself. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you know, man, I'm not sure if I should say that joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know I can joke around with certain people, but I'm kind of afraid because they might think I'm like, you know, and so you just, you know, you like, that's what I'm saying. It's the, you know, being afraid of like, you know, man, I just like to, you know, just be myself. And, you know, if you say a joke and I don't laugh, I'm not angry. I'm just like, dude, it wasn't funny. You know?
You're not as funny as you
No, it's like, I mean, don't take it personal. Just like,
now, that would never happen with me.
Okay. See, that's my point example. But no, it's just, you know, being okay. You know, it's like as a teacher, they say, hey, don't be so quick to just keep talking. Like, you give instruction and just stop. Yeah. You know, be okay with the awkwardness of silence. Let people digest it. You know, give them some time. You know what I mean? And don't feel like you missed the mark because you have not gotten something. People process things differently. Yeah. You know, personally, my relational kind of the way I grew, it takes me time. Like, you know, I'm you know, on stage is much different from me like being there. Like I would be more of a shell there than I am here. Right. You know, here I can express myself. There I would be way more guarded. You know, if I was with my wife in the congregation, I would be holding her real tight right now. You know, and we would be really close because I would be anxious. Yeah. You know, it's like, man, I know somebody's gonna ask me something. You know, and
that's because you're an introvert.
Yeah. It's because I'm an introvert. You know, and it's like, man, I want to make sure that I answer this question right. Yeah. You know, because if I don't, it's just like, oh man, I just don't want to go through all that. It's draining. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, and so there's that anxiety that every visitor has.
Yeah.
But it's multiplied, you know, as a minority because you know it's coming. Like, you know they're going to swarm you. You know.
Because they're trying, we try overly hard sometimes to make you feel welcome.
And
I'm
already,
false. Hands can.
And I'm already nervous. You know what I mean? I'm already nervous. And I don't want to blow it, and I know you don't want to blow it. You know,
we don't want to say the wrong thing. Whatever.
You know, and I just think that it takes time, and hopefully, you know, when a person comes the second or third time, there's a great opportunity that they may continue to come if you connect with them. You know, so I think those are the things that you know, and you know, the leadership knows just from studying church attendance and how people visit and those things and how likely they are to acclimate, you know, but a big piece of that is not a ministry, not worship, you know, it's just, hey, listen, am I going to, is it okay for me to be who I am? And I think that's for anybody.
Yeah, be able to find a place.
That's right.
So I want to kind of backtrack just a little bit. We're getting close to the end of our time together, but I think this is important for us to understand is, you mentioned MLK, and you mentioned Juneteenth, and Juneteenth is obviously coming up soon.
Yes.
So, what does that mean for a church like us to incorporate that, to bring value to that, and to not, I think for some, feel like we're entering into a political thing, but to truly just value important dates that we all value historically, and here's some that we can.
Well, I think it's practical.
Okay.
You know, this is not head knowledge.
Yeah.
This has to be something that is seen.
Yeah.
Right? It has to be say, hey, listen, there's a parade that we never knew about, or there's a block party that we never knew about it. You know what? Can we bring water? Can we bring barbecue sauce? Yeah. Can we bring some sides?
Yeah.
You know, can we bring our worship team?
Yeah.
You know, because I think one of the problems is that, and what the church kind of struggles with, especially in times like this, is that the idea that you need to go start something. Don't go and start something because you probably don't have to.
Yeah.
You may be unaware that there's an African American on the other side of the track that's been working for 20 years on these same issues. He hadn't been able to get funding, he hadn't been able to get help, support, and guess what? Especially right now, the value of someone like yourself or congregation to say, listen, I'm going to come under your leadership and support you because you have great ideas. I affirm what you're doing, and I'm going to support you. I think it's even more important to say, hey, we're going to go up and start a social justice reform here at Crosspoint.
As if it's never been happening before.
It's already happened.
Yeah.
It's already happened, I guarantee you. And if not, you can raise up leaders because there are people that are very passionate. I mean, we're that close to Austin. There's all kind of people that care about these things. It don't necessarily have to be black, but guess what? You can join something. You know, and you can be a part of it. And in joining those things, you're saying, you know what? It's really not all about us. You know, the same way like Samaritan Purse, you know, those type of things. There are people who are really genuinely, and guess what? Theologically, you may have some differences. You know, but guess what? There's going to be these opportunities for dividing walls that want to say, hey, this is why we can't.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why we can, though. And why we should. And I think that's the leadership that has to go on now. Because we all know why we can't. But do we know why we should? And I think that those are the things that needs us to move forward to now engage people that are different. Because, like I said, there are things going on. You know, and I tell you what, if you want to know, go to the barbershop.
Yeah. I don't go.
I know you don't, okay? You know, go to the barbershop, go to the hair salon. They know everything. They know everything that's going on in the community. They talk all day, every day, to every person that comes in, you know, and they tell them everything. You know, so find these pockets of information just like they taught us, you know, and then figure out what works for you. Because it still needs to be contextual. Like, it needs to work. Like, it's just, you can't, because your heart, you know, you won't put in if your heart is not in. you know? And so I think my biggest suggestion for Crosspoint and any other church, the first thing I would say, don't go and start something.
Yeah.
Don't go because like of all this going on, like everybody's convicted. I'm crying, you know.
Yeah.
My father, you know, I'm like, I'm at the altar, you know, like nonstop, you know. I mean, I'm just, my heart is broken. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy that your heart is broken, but there's a black man over there that's heart been broken for 35 years.
Yeah.
And you can do more from him. You can do more for him and the people that he has been trying to serve than you could ever imagine just by saying, brother, I support you.
Yeah. Showing up, being present.
Being present.
Yeah.
You don't need money.
Yeah.
You don't need all these other things. If you have it, that's great. But I'm not here to give you money. I'm here to give you my support.
Yeah.
And in that support, in our relationship, we will leverage what we have to help support and do whatever we can for justice, you know, for reform. What can we do?
And many times, let's be honest, money is the easy issue.
It's the
easy solution. So
it's the easy thing
to throw it in there.
That's right.
When really, truly, what's needed is money may be part of it,
yes,
but presence.
Absolutely. And like I said, and it's the way that you go it, you know, the way you go about it, you know, it's just saying, listen, I'm not here to save you. I'm not here to fix your organization. It's crap. It's not organized.
Yeah.
You know, you need an accountant. Like, I'm not here to break you down like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I can tell you what I'm good at. And if you need me here, I'm willing to help.
Yeah.
But most importantly, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's powerful. And it speaks because just like white people are afraid black people take over, black people feel the same way.
Sure.
Like, man, they coming to take over. Like, they not coming to be my friend.
Yeah.
They want something from me.
Yeah.
In Africa, we went to South Africa, they call them the Tubob. And they said the Tubob are coming. The Tubob are coming. And every time the Tubob came, they took something. They came offering gifts, but they always took something. And this is traditional, oral tradition that's been passed to generations. When white people leave and I'm there talking with them, that was the conversation that we have.
Yeah.
Through interpreters.
Yeah.
When the white pastors leave, they say, the Tubob, we know he wants something, we still need them here, but we're also afraid that they're going to take something that we not even know what they're here for.
Yeah.
And that's something that's been built into us. And so you have to overcome that with service and compassion and empathy and really a selflessness that says, you know what, I care more about you.
Yeah.
I really do. And I'm sorry, you know, and I want to, if there's something I can do, I want to be able to do it, but I'm here for you and I'm here for them.
Yeah. I think about that. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I've had those discussions as well, and continually say, we're truly here to serve you. We're not. Whatever you need is what we're here to do. But I think that's that spirit of what can be is we're here to do you a favor.
That's right.
And in reality, we're not there to do them a favor. We're there to join alongside. And so that's, whether that's social justice here or missions around the world, we're there to just join hands together and be shoulder to shoulder and serve together. And when we step away, you haven't lost anything. You've gained something. One, a friendship, but then also the gospel is propagated, or water, or whatever that may be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, bro, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
And this has been a great conversation. It's the beginning.
Absolutely.
You know, we've been talking for the last few weeks and think about different things. And your question to me was, what am I supposed to say? And I said, whatever the Lord lays on your heart. And so I appreciate what God has laid on your heart and shared. And I think of Galatians 3:23. There's neither Greek or Jew, slave or free. We are all one in Christ Jesus. Amen. And that's our location. That's our location, is in Christ Jesus. All of those things are broken down. And so I appreciate you starting an honest conversation with us and being able to do that. And we'll continue doing those things again. And I want to invite you back to preach and to share with us and to give voice for us to the totality of the gospel. Amen. And so I appreciate your friendship and that you were able to be here, and we'll look forward to having some food here in a little bit.
Thank you.
So again, I'm Chris. I'm the lead pastor here at Crosspoint Community Church, and this has been a unique Sunday. I know it's been, if you've been tuning in since the beginning, this has been a long time, and I promised you a break at some point, and you haven't gotten it. And I apologize, but I truly believe it was worth our time and our investment together. So again, thanks to my brother KaRon Coleman, and we look forward to seeing you next week as we continue our series, Colorblind. Can we pray together as we close out? Let's do that. Heavenly Father, I thank you for my brother KaRon. I thank you for his family. I thank you for his call, one that is called to Jesus, that you reached out from heaven and you touched his heart through FCA, and that he came to know you, and through Rod and his passion for reaching young men for Jesus, and that was the beginning of his walk with Jesus, and that you've also called him specifically to vocational ministry, and he served as a pastor in different ways, and now he's in a vocational ministry in a school, and I wholeheartedly believe that in many ways he will have more impact doing coaching than he could ever have preaching, and that the salt and light that he will bring to that campus and to that community will be even greater. So, Father, I just pray a blessing upon him and part of his family and just the school district that he's in, and that people would be drawn to Jesus because of the faith and the man and the character of KaRon and his family. Father, may you and us, I know that you've broken our hearts, that you've chiseled away, and you've shown us some areas of our eyes and our hearts and our souls that were blind and that we were ignorant. And so, Father, I pray that we would just continue to lean into this conversation and to realize that it is truly a heart thing. It's a gospel thing, and that the gospel strips away the pride. It strips away all the things that we hold on to that sometimes give us value, so that we can lean into and understand that our identity is in Christ alone. And that's why Galatians 3:28 is true, is that in Christ, our identity found in him strips away our past, strips away all the things that we hold to that give us worth and value, that our worth and value is truly found in Christ Jesus. So here at Crosspoint, Father, we desire to be a community that is about pursuing you and being in Christ Jesus and building a community that looks like heaven. May you grant us that blessing. May you grant us that favor and mercy to be a part of this and continue to lean into this conversation. It's in your Son's name that I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Is it cut?
All right. Now we're cut.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Okay.
I was going, if they wanted to answer.
Yeah. So now y'all can scoot up.
God, I look to you. I won't be overwhelmed. Give me vision to see things like you do. God, I look to you. You call me a citizen of heaven. glory.